So our very first customer grew individual giving 350% year over year. And not just 1 year, like every year before was one amount, give or take. And when they implemented Poster Child's kind of peer-to-peer strategy for fundraising, 3.5x the amount that they raised.
This week on the podcast, I am excited to speak with Leandrew Robinson, the CEO and founder of PosterChild.ai. I ran across Leandrew through a mutual friend as we both are adventuring in the fun world of AI meets nonprofits. Leandrew, I know what confused me enough to get into this bizarre overlap of technology and social impact. What brings you here?
Why am I here? I joined this world.
It all began.
I'm an entrepreneur. Most of my background has been in e-commerce. I've sold ton of t-shirts and sneakers to the tune of $1 billion worth. And as I started to think about my next venture, I was kind of captivated with this idea around just like storytelling, but specifically crowdsourced storytelling. So how can you give the mic and the camera to the people? My first fantasy about Poster Child was actually a Nike poster. You know, the Nike poster with the small white letters and the little like 5-word slogan, you know, you're the best at your weakest or whatever, right? With a swoosh in a grayscale, black and white kind of picture. I was like, wouldn't it be awesome when everyone bought their running shoes, they can take a picture of their first marathon and be the poster child of Nike and every other brand that they love. And I started talking to customers, which is how I got here. Started talking to customers, started talking to retailers, started talking to brands. And it was like, cool concept. Started talking to YouTube personalities. Cool concept, great way to engage my community, but it was clearly like tertiary. But when I talked to nonprofits, they said over and over again, how did you know? How did you know I just started doing this alumni outreach campaign to gather stories from the people we serve to better share our mission? How did you know that authentic stories connect better with funders? How did you know we started that initiative and put it on the shelf? And they kept saying that over and over. So I was like, I'm building for this customer persona because they clearly want this. So that's how I got here. They told me.
Yeah, I feel like no big deal. You were also like Time Magazine Person of the Year when they did the mirror, right? Time Magazine, and they like had the mirror, right? We all want to see ourselves in the campaign, in the magazine, in the hero, right? Who is the hero is another way of framing it. And it seems like your tool is putting the consumer, but in this case, the donor, the supporter in that role. And so I get the poster child part. Where does the .ai come in?
Yeah. So, one of the things we noticed as we're talking with customers, like what's preventing you? So a nonprofit, they do storytell, but when you look at most of the organizations, they spotlight a hero, a person in their community once a month, once a quarter, very infrequently. And we just started poking on that problem. Like, why is it so infrequent? And what it came down to was the coordination between if I wanted to tell your story, capture it, and turn it into branded content, said it takes 4 to 6 hours per person to interview them, to edit the interview, to get a picture, go back and forth, one more follow-up question, and then design that into a social post, or then design that into an article on a blog or something like that. 4 hours times 1,000-person community is 2 years worth of work. So we said, this is what's making it impossible. This is the friction that we need to resolve. And AI is perfect for that. AI is very good at doing an assembly of multiple jobs, which is, hey, read all of this and pull out the best quote that should go on the social media banner. Hey, read all of this. Don't change their words too much, but write an article. So looked at basically employing AI to take away some of that coordination that was preventing nonprofits from celebrating more of their community more often. Yeah.
There's a term running around the interwebs, the AI slop. AI slop being this creation of just really terrible, generic AI content from a text, from a video, from a image basis. And what I like about what you're doing is that you are bringing AI to bear, but it's in the process, not the origination, if that makes sense. I don't know
Absolutely.
if you can tease that out a bit more.
For sure. So I was fortunate to hear from the nonprofits whom we were talking to that the type of stories and the type of posts that resonate the best were authentic ones. They told me to keep the blemishes. So it gave me, this opportunity, because when I first started this journey, a little over a year ago, I was really fascinated with the image generation. Do we make an avatar twin of a person? Do we take away all the blemishes, et cetera, et cetera? And it was very clear that people want real. I think it's something about the way our eyes work. We're the original large language models as humans, right? When we see something that feels real, I think we know. And when we see something that's AI generated, like totally, we also definitely know. And I think our heartstrings, our trust is diminished a little bit. So one of the customers told me, keep it real, keep the blemishes. And we created rules from day one around use the person's real words, use the person's real faces, et cetera, et cetera. And that turned into a beautiful safeguard basically from the slop, right? Because it's inherently authentic, it's inherently true, it's inherently a real story that this person is actually trying to tell. And we're just helping them capture it, edit it, synthesize it, things like that. So we're slop proof right now.
For now.
For
Who's to
now, we'll
say?
see. Yes.
So it seems like AI in this process to actually help real stories is synthesizing things and then also helping you match that into a style that would follow the brand guidelines of the organization and just help you with that type of authentic storytelling at scale, which all of our content platforms are just, never ending demands for that type of storytelling. Is there a way that you're thinking about like the cohesion of a bunch of these disparate stories being pulled together, or is that on the shoulders of the comms department, the fundraising department?
There is a way. Curation is important. So we typically go to market with like three core offerings, right? So one, just a library of social posts that we automatically create for you. So that's more disparate. You got to curate it yourself. Another thing that we produce is a website, like a blog that curates the stories. So that's kind of the beginning of some curation, and it's curated by person. So this is a person you're featuring, and it's more of like a full length interview on that person. And then there's like a fundraiser kind of digital link, and that kind of brings in the bear like their impact numbers, their appeal to support in a portion of that person's story. So that's one where it's super synthesized to like, this is the value I've gotten from this organization, and this is the organization's need to raise money kind of deal. Where we're thinking about going in the future to like even more so answer your question is more like thought leadership pieces that we automatically assemble for an executive director or a development director or some leader at the nonprofit, where it may take 3 to 4 stories that share a thread. Maybe the thread is this organization helped me overcome a fear or something like that. And we will help essentially that leader introduce that thread, that concept, how their mission is about giving courage to the population they serve, and pull out those stories as like examples of how they do that and then bring a conclusion to it. So that's how we're helping create a thought leadership piece. And that would be something that will go out less kind of frequently, maybe once a week or something like that. Executive Leaders Corner or something.
I kind of love that. I feel like there is so much like you don't even need like Like, so we have callswriter.ai. We're generating
Yeah,
500,000 words a
I'm
day for making
familiar.
the world less terrible. And
Thank you
I
for
want to
that.
come back to both of our, like, why is it so hard questions, but I want to pull the thread a little bit farther here on that CEO moment, but also the fact that there's so much that could be gleaned from that small amount. Like, just talk to your CEO, record them for like
Hmm.
30 minutes once every couple weeks,
Yeah,
and your ability to then chop that up, like to your point, the role of AI not in the creation but the curation and processing elements of that, chopping that up into the clips and getting that voice out there is just such a tremendous time saving. So that is of interest to a lot of folks, I'm sure.
sure.
I am curious though, because that also leads me to the other problem that we're facing, which is the feature bloat. Like, you have that client be like, but could it also do this?
Hmm.
Are you making that sort of the cut of like what to create and what to cut from the list of yet another feature?
I think we are in the condition of the good old startup constraint of budget. Until we recently raised a round, but we're still operating pretty lean. And before that, it legit was we only have capacity to do X amount. So we're focusing on, and I believe in directionally the 80-20 rules, all of that. I believe simple is better. I believe there's like a main thing, a main problem, a main friction point that stands way above everything else. So we try to focus on that and just keep it super simple. Like, what's the super main problem? We were selling a prototype, and the prototype tried to suss out, what is the main thing, right? And for starters, it was they did not have the time capacity to produce this type of content in a way that they can communicate their mission and connect it to donors, et cetera, et cetera. So we gave them a lot of time back initially, kind of deal. So we kind of started there. But a good example is you're great at doing videos and things like that. We've only made a handful of videos. So our stuff is super static. So we're still just on, and when we thought about volume, like everyone, video was like very exciting and I want to get into that, but not a lot of folks had video files available to start with, but they all had rows of data, like words and pictures and things like that. So we started there. So that we kind of are still like following the customers and just trying to be disciplined, knowing that, as you can attest to, a startup, it's a 10-year journey. So buckle up.
The other like bizarre thing in our current development cycle is that I find that if I just like wait 4.5 months, the thing I was gonna like, oh, I'm gonna have to build this from scratch and like stack this tool and this tool,
Voila.
and suddenly it's like one API call away. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, like, waiting is a huge advantage sometimes with some of these. Like, wait a minute, that feature is inevitable. Like,
Yeah.
am I gonna like go through
Yeah.
this sprint or two
Yeah.
sprints to build something that's going to already be built?
Yeah. That's a great point that gets at another kind of forcing function, right? Of building in the AI space, which is like you have these behemoth companies who are building all these building blocks, essentially foundational things. So you kind of have to be clear of like what is going to be a foundational chunk that you should not invent. You should take advantage of what they invent and apply it to your vertical, very important use case, right? And in this case, it's helping nonprofits storytell and fundraise. And I feel like it's going to take a long time for Google or whomever to try to address that directly, but they want to build building blocks to help us address that. So yeah, we try to stay on things that's like vertical to what our potential customer really, really wants, and not do anything else essentially.
Yeah, I've been I've made the mistake enough times of trying to pick up pennies in front of a steamroller, which is the metaphor of like creating these tiny features that inevitably get squashed by
Hmm.
these giant funded companies.
Yeah, same.
I've also tried to sort of diversify away from putting all of my, API eggs in one basket, buying into only one model,
Mm-hmm.
and instead saying like, all right, it seems like there are best fit models out there. I'm wondering for storytelling, is there a type of model that you like better than others? Or have you found it's more about the prompt, the temperature, or other elements that you're applying around the model at this point?
Yeah, we try them all and honestly use them all. So in storytelling, first there's a piece of like analysis, right? To get the sentiment of the story. Is this positive kind of deal? So there's this piece where we may use, say, Google Gemini for that. Like, hey, analyze this and tell us, give us a score on how good of a story or testimonial this is. So that may be one job for that. And then when it comes to, let's say, writing a caption for social media, it's like, hey, read this story and then write a caption from the voice of the organization, the school, whoever is the poster. In that one, we often are using like Chat GPT with heavy training, but writes very well for, especially like more like narrative, creative forms kind of deal. So we're trying pretty much everything, and I think we look at it pretty agnostically. Like we feel like we're always going to swap in and out and take advantage of the best, because I mean you're seeing it right there, rolling out updates that are they're teaching and learning themselves, right? So they're getting better and better. So I think they're all converging to be great, but you can tell the difference, which is interesting and cool from the different platforms.
Yeah, there's, as we reach like sort of parity in the market, there's also seemingly like areas that they realize like we are going to have to carve out our expertise as we like reach this asymptote of like everything's pretty darn smart, but
Yeah.
ours has been slightly finer tuned in this direction. And then, you layer on your special sauce, which are the prompts, the RAG database, the process and approach. And the other thing that like, oh, why doesn't someone just do that themselves? Like the same thing for like CauseWriter or our tools. Like you totally could.
Yeah.
But like in that subtle reply that you gave, actually there's a lot of nuance in that like you're having like multiple GPT calls. Each of those maybe have a different model, different training, different prompt, and also you've refined each one of those steps. And so all of that, again, is removing one of those things that, as you said, saves like 2 years of work if you're talking about
And it's a
reaching
never
out to all your
ending.
supporters.
Yeah. And it's a never ending journey of refining, right? We're making that commitment, and a long tail of organizations. It's not a wise decision to say, every time a new update comes out or a new AI feature comes out, I'm going to learn it, perfect it, refine it, apply it to me. It's just not realistic. We don't do that with anything else, right? I'm gonna build my own car. Every time a new engine or a new electric battery comes out, I'm gonna apply it myself. It's like, no, I'm gonna buy one for a reasonable price
I'm
so
just
I
going to
can
use
get from
Lyft. I'm
point
not even
A
going to
to B.
bother with that.
Yeah, or use Lyft. Exactly. So it's the same concept, human nature, and there'll be some tinkerers out there, and it should be. I think people should learn for themselves. I think that the application of AI for any type of organization, it's just gonna allow them to streamline a lot of things, and hopefully allow them to extend their capacity to make impact and to get more sleep at night. This is my hope.
Yeah. I feel like I have to keep reminding myself and our team and that we are still incredibly early for this sector.
Yeah,
We're
for sure.
pretty early still. And the phase one of this is the team starts to slowly adopt and use generic chat GPT to like write some emails,
Mm-hmm.
write some social posts. And then like phase two is you start to custom build some projects inside of there or custom GPTs and update it from there. And you realize, oh, this is a bit better. You start your prompt library and then you realize like, oh, wait a minute. Every single major player now has its own AI. What are we using for what purpose? And it's this exploration part, but the whether or not you build versus buy is still being decided. In the early days of the internet, you're like, all right, we have to have our own server. Like, we don't need
Mm-hmm.
that anymore. I have
Yeah.
to roll my own code. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't need to code
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And you really, and I think it's important, have to pick those battles. One of the things that, and interrupt me if you want to take a tangent off that, but
No.
one of the things that I see on teams that will be the next hiccup will be as you make that phase, that jump from like, all right, we get generic GPT, like it's shoved like a side of fries onto every single platform. I'm so much as writing a post on LinkedIn and AI is like, let me finish that for you. And you're like,
Yeah.
geez, thanks for the generic handoff there. Oh my gosh, I got called out the other day because like part of my post was like a little generic, and they're like, that looks like GPT.
Yeah.
I was like, boy, I'm sorry, the free post I'm putting out didn't meet your content qualifications, but people can spot this stuff.
Yeah.
And so as you begin to interpret, the phase 2 is coming. But then what I'm seeing is that like after somebody like vibe codes this like cool solution, it works for a month, and then somebody updates the endpoint, the model, and the maintenance begins.
Yeah.
I don't know where you feel on the sort of like where you see the market in terms of adoption, the curve, and what the next pitfalls are going to be.
I think it's comically early.
Comically early.
I think that what's different about this time, I'm reading Bill Gates' new book, Source Code. And when he was learning the code, computers were so hard to get to. And he happened to have one 20 minutes away from him. And he would sneak out at night and go code on this very difficult to use thing. And it was so much friction to be an early adopter. With AI, which has been around forever, as I know you know, but I don't think the general public knows that, okay, when I shop on Amazon or watching Netflix, like that's AI. How did they know what I wanted? Like that's AI. It's statistics, right? It's like predicting what should probably come next. But I think with ChatGPT, they made it so consumer inaccessible that it's creating this frenzy of like, oh my God, we all have to like use it and apply it to everything, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we're seeing a lot of like follow the leader where it's showing up as, like a co-pilot and things, but we're early. Like we're totally early and to the point where, at some point it will likely be similar to an employee, right? Where it's like, hey, like you are my my journalist, or you are my designer, or you are, certainly my personal assistant. You're carrying out jobs kind of on your own. Like I used Manus the other day. And that's, the one out of China, I believe. And it's supposed to be like a real agent who can do its own thing. And I was asking it to I think, create a lead list for me. And it said, hey, I need to create an account on, I think, is it okay? Like an employee would, like a junior intern would do. And then I say, yes, it's fine. And they went, created their own account, and then, did his thing. So I think that next level is gonna blow this level out of the water, right? I really have this like autonomous agent who's working for me and kind of, coming up with next steps on their own and then checking in. And I think there's steps after that. And I know the Holy Grail is supposed to be, what is it? Like, they're actually like just intelligent on their own, could teach. What is it called? GI, general intelligence?
AGI. I mean,
AGI.
but it's, AGI seems to be in the eye of the shareholder at this
Yeah,
point
yeah,
of being
for
like, when
sure.
can we declare it so our stock price jumps?
Yeah, exactly. Long story short, I think we're in the beginning phases of some very cool and practical applications of large language models, and for some very broad use cases. I think that over time, I think we're going to laugh at how early we were and everyone tried to say we're going to adopt it, but I think it's cool.
I'm curious, you came from the ecom world. What has been the most, we'll use the word surprising thing as you've moved into the B2B nonprofit world?
It's been a lot of surprising things. I would say that pleasantly surprised at how human and non-transactional it is. The value of relationships. So in e-commerce and in retail, there's relationships with, buyers and suppliers, and you can act like there isn't, but you go to those trade shows, or someone sends you a gift and you're having a relationship because you're making each other money. But I think in the nonprofit world, this has been my experience at least. There's a lot of like well-intentioned people who are really connected to the mission, and the mission are often very people based. So they really value relationships on a different level, and you may end up having a series of conversations where there's no transaction even mentioned, right? It's just like, let's help each other, let's learn from each other. So that's been a learning for sure. It's like a lot of good people. I think another, I would say, surprising thing is that, this is an interesting time for nonprofits and maybe getting threatened that they're going to get their status removed or certain funding, dried up. A lot of nonprofits, like 40, 50% get government revenue money. So I think watching the macro effect of the current like political climate make them like pause and get really, really freaked out and kind of take some stutter steps. It's like really like slowed them down and they're kind of freaked out and not sure how to pivot out of it. And I think the difference in this world versus, let's say, a for-profit e-commerce world is you kind of, in that other world, you're more like directly, trying to influence the market, right? You're not kind of waiting on a macro thing. You're like, hey, well, let me try this other initiative or this other marketing campaign, or let me go to my customer base directly. So I think there's like an interdependency on funders, and which includes the government. That makes things a lot more slower, I'd say, and less maybe resilient in a sense of like not resilient and like they won't kind of find a way out, but resilient in a sense of, if a macro effect happened, I have 7 other ways to go about accomplishing the same mission. You're kind of like, I need this policy to go back in place for me to thrive, or really bad things happen.
Yeah, I'd say, the thing that I have come across in terms of running into entrepreneurs, social impact entrepreneurs, is essentially this assumption that like if you build it, they will come. Like, not only will they not come, when they do, they're going to stand in the parking lot for a solid 3 months, just checking out the building. They're just going to look at the building for 3 months.
Is that
And
building
then
still
we're
there?
going to go into the like, maybe. And you're like, please, this is not the biggest decision in the procurement time is
longer,
staggeringly longer.
Yeah.
And then the sort of the market effects, right? Of we put out social impact in the world, but we're not selling another pair of fill in the blank. So that type of feedback loop to the customer is just uniquely different.
Yeah.
Right. Our customer's different than the source of the money many times.
For sure.
Which is a different game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is the big thing. And the other thing is, to any entrepreneur out there trying to break into the social impact B2B world, stop creating CRMs and stop creating donation tools. We got enough.
Just we got them. We got them.
We did it.
We did it.
The like mission accomplished.
Manage people, get money in. Yes.
Yeah. So on the donation side, though, I did like another facet of the tool I saw, and maybe you have a case study or a story you can share around it, because I also believe that it's where a lot of organizations need to double down on, specifically right now for fundraising in the peer-to-peer game, and how you've like used that process to personalize the donation portal a bit. Could you walk us through that? Because I think there's like a lesson to be learned here.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing it up. Yes. So our very first customer grew individual giving 350% year over year. And not just 1 year, like every year before was one amount, give or take. And when they implemented Poster Child's kind of peer-to-peer strategy for fundraising, 3.5x the amount that they raised. The way that worked and we got to that number is it was a 6-week time frame. And essentially, as we're creating stories for each person in their community, we have their likeness, their face. We have multiple quotes. We take one of those. And essentially, we make a unique fundraising page for every person in their organization. And it could be board members, team members, people they serve, etc. So anyone we have enough data on to make a page for, we do. And it creates this ubiquitous effect where in that 6-week time frame for this organization, Colorwave, they had, I think, 655 different pages. So these people are sharing out their own pages. Colorwave is picking a set of people to share out on any given day. And the pages are going mini viral, right? But it's a lot of them. So like if they're going mini, that person's mom is reposting it, their friends are reposting it and commenting on it. Because you're like celebrating the person, but telling about this organization. And it's just this rallying around humans in this organization doing good work that happens. And the way I kind of look at it very simply is you go from telling one story to hundreds of stories. So the one story is, here's my organization, here's our impact, here's why you should give to us, right? That's one story. It's a comprehensive story. It's a big story, but it's one story. So imagine the amount of impressions you could get off of that story. It's difficult if you're just telling that one story. It's kind of annoying if you're going to say it 4 times a day for 6 weeks. They had 600. The call to action is still the same. Their donation tech embedded in that page, but the story was different. This is Elizabeth and why she found the program valuable. And it's totally different than Tyrese and why he found the program valuable, right? So that was super successful. I would say the surprising learning in that was that it actually wasn't, most of the money, maybe like 60-70% of it actually didn't come from like the individuals sharing their own pages. It came from a current supporter or a board member or a team member of Colorwave sharing someone else's story. So it was a new way for them to say, hey guys, hey, my network, I know I keep telling you about this Colorwave organization, but let me share a story with you of why I care about this organization. This one touched my heart. Read it. And it was that extended this new level of trust and like opened new gates for people to understand the organization and decide to give. So that was a fun, surprising learning of like, you can still drive this with your people and your supporters, but the stories still matter because they're the one, they drive trust and affinity, I'd say.
I think there's a window of time where this strategy is going to crush it. And then other people are going to figure it out. But in that period of time, it's like one of those, like, I would go to that as a tactic.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if we could always repeat it, but it falls also under the category of simple, not easy.
Yeah.
These are
Yeah.
simple stories, just all about our main theme of doing good from different perspectives. It's also sort of unlocking the power law of the community, where I'm willing to bet 10% of those pages were responsible for 90% of the donations because their stories were just perfectly not perfect. A little bit of blemish and a little bit of real human.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a tactic that I see GoFundMe use to absurd effective impact.
Yes.
Where they can keep having people tell their own emotional appeals and have other people surface that if it hits the right frequency. And you're able to do that without fraying the brand. I think that's important because a lot of times I see in the peer-to-peer game, you end up with a lot of sort of stray acts of branding. Mm-hmm. Where they've like done their own thing in the corner and you're like, it kind of worked, but you just call their organization something different. And now, somebody's dumping Jello on their head and giving us money. And you're like, well, under this banner, it's like visually cohesive.
Good point.
And then folks can share it and you unlock the power law. So this tactic will work. Yeah. And then you're going to have to figure out something else. But right now, I love that you're helping organizations leverage this tool in a responsive way. Anything else, like tactics, things you have learned that you want to share before we move into some rapid fire?
No magic wands. I'm learning
nothing magic.
That one thing we think a lot about is creating serendipity. Serendipity really matters in this space. And I think there's a way to manufacture it authentically. I think stories is a really big part of that. But I think network is another big piece of that. And that's kind of where we're trying to go next. How do you understand the gold that's in your network? I started a nonprofit when I was a senior at UC Berkeley, and it got its main anchor funder because they read an article in the Oakland Tribune, and he happened to be like one of the largest shareholders of Clorox at the time, and he cared about that specific cause. And he called and he said, I want to fund something like this. And, it was this nice, like, great 5-year relationship. And that was serendipity. Like, we happened to have the article. He happened to be reading it that day over oatmeal or whatever he was eating. And he has the personality type to pick up the phone or go on the phone book and call, right? So how do you use stories as like a gateway to see who engages with them and to see who of those people are potential funders or are connected with people who are uniquely interested in your mission and what you do? So that's the next like big thing we want to crack. So I'll leave with that. More is coming there.
Awesome. More features. That's the answer.
Yeah, basically.
Alrighty. Let's go through some rapid fire. Keep your responses fairly short if possible. All right, here we go. What is one tech tool or website that you or your organization has started using in the last year?
Perplexity.
Nice. All right. What tech issues are you currently battling with?
We are battling with permissions, meaning there's a lot of public content that's posted on social media. And it's like, which can we help the organizations use and what can't we? So terms and conditions and privacy policies. So I think that, we're using tech to be able to find a lot of great information, but, it's some of it is not all the way permissible by their terms of conditions.
What is coming in the next year that has you the most excited?
The ability to crowdsource the entire market, like foundations and nonprofits, and find a way to be macroly helpful to everyone and like finding each other and reading each other's stories and missions and kind of solving the discovery problem.
Can you talk about a mistake you made earlier in your career that shapes the way you do things now?
Gosh, so many. Where do we start? One mistake I've made before is hiring too aggressively early on before reaching product market fit. It creates a scenario where you go after certain deals that may not be sustainable or may not lead to you building a breakaway product.
Do you believe that nonprofits can successfully go out of business?
Yes. You mean like gracefully go out of business?
Successfully.
I think absolutely nonprofits should not feel like they have to be around for hundreds of years like Harvard. I think that a lot of nonprofits are contextual and helpful, and I think they should remember that the impact that they've made is a beautiful garden that will sprout fruit forever, but they don't have to stay in business forever for that impact to have been made.
If I were to throw you in the hot tub time machine back to your starting of PosterChild.ai, what would you be telling your drier self?
I would say have as many in-person conversations as possible. When I map out when true inflection points happened, a lot of them were these in-person moments where serendipity happened.
What is something you think your organization should stop doing?
We should stop leading with social media posts and lead with a story about a person.
All right. How did you get started in the social impact sector?
So I mentioned I started my first nonprofit as a senior in college, so it's always been near and dear to my heart to, use your knowledge, use your access, use your resources to help others. So that's just who I am. So every step along my entrepreneurial journey, I've tried to stay engaged. So it's just a thread of who I am as a human.
What advice did your parents give you that you either followed or didn't follow?
My father was very charitable and he would give and tell me not to tell anybody if I saw him. So I try to practice that in various ways.
What advice would you give college grads looking to enter the nonprofit sector?
I would tell them to enter without a prescription. I find a lot of like college students, I have a ninth grader, and they like pick their exact job title like up front. And I would say find the mission, and probably even more important, the person or people you really want to work with, and just go there and be helpful and be impactful. And the rest is going to sort itself out.
Well, Leandrew, thank you for your time, for your work, for your wisdom. Finally, how do people find you? How do people help you?
Go to PosterChild.ai. I think there's only one Leandrew Robinson on LinkedIn. You can see my name.
The one and only.
One and only. There's probably others, but there's only one that looks like me. And yeah, hit me up, follow me, message me. How you can help is we are actively trying to put, how you're putting more good words in the world, we are actively trying to put more good stories in the world. So if you're a nonprofit and you have a community of hundreds or thousands and you would like to tell each of their stories, we would love to help you do that.
Thanks again. Appreciate your work. And I hope for your success and the success of the nonprofits using your tool this year.
Thank you so much. And back at you. This was a pleasure.